From ancient texts talking about flying machines all the way to the lockdown secrets of Area 51, this idea that we're not alone, it's been with us forever, hasn't it? So today, we're going to dive deep into the evidence. We're talking strange artifacts, really bizarre phenomena, and some pretty compelling testimony. Let's try and unravel this mystery together. But here's the thing, and it's a real paradox. It seems like reports of strange craft, impossible tech, even alien bodies, they just pop up all through history. So if the evidence is literally everywhere, why is there still so much doubt? Why is it so hard for people to believe? Let's get into it. Okay, so here's the plan. We're going to start way back in the ancient world, looking for clues of otherworldly visitors. Then we'll check out some tech that just shouldn't exist. After that, we'll fast forward to the modern era of UFOs and government secrets. And at the very end, well, the big question is going to be all yours. All right, so let's kick things off thousands of years in the past. This is where some of the most fascinating clues aren't found in some high-tech lab, but they're literally carved into stone or written on ancient scrolls. All right, first up, the Vimanas of ancient India. Now, these things described in old texts like the Science of Aeronautics, they weren't just some poetic chariots of the gods. No, the descriptions are of detailed flying machines. Some were even said to be autonomous, like mechanical birds that could travel through space and even go underwater. Pretty wild, right? Okay, now let's hop over to Egypt. So, in the Temple of Hathor, you find this carving, and I mean, come on. Look at it. It looks so much like a giant light bulb, right? It's even got what looks like a filament and a cable coming out of it. Of course, mainstream science just laughs at the idea of electricity in ancient Egypt, but you can't deny how similar it looks. And the mystery just keeps getting deeper. At the Temple of Seti I, we've got the famous helicopter hieroglyphs. I mean, these carvings look just like a helicopter, a submarine, and an airship. And the clarity is remarkable. We're talking about perfect depictions of 20th century technology, thousands of years early. So what is going on here? Well, one theory says these are exactly what they look like, direct depictions of advanced vehicles. Simple as that. But mainstream archaeology has a different take. They say it's something called a palimpsest, which is basically an ancient typo. The idea is that Ramesses II carved his title over his father's, and the symbols just happened to overlap in a way that accidentally created these modern shapes. So ancient tech or ancient mistake? The debate is definitely still raging. And then you've got the Ica stones from Peru. And there are thousands of these engraved stones, and they show stuff that just completely flips our understanding of history on its head. We're talking humans fighting dinosaurs, surgeons doing what look like heart transplants, and yep, you guessed it, strange flying objects in the sky. Now, scientists really debate whether they're authentic or not, but the images themselves, they're undeniably provocative. Okay, let's shift gears now. We've looked at carvings. Let's talk about actual physical objects. Because some artifacts have survived that are just so far ahead of their time, they feel like they don't belong. I mean, just look at the Antikythera mechanism. This thing was found in a shipwreck, and it's basically the world's oldest known analog computer. We're talking about a complex system of gears and dials from the 2nd century BC that could predict lunar cycles, the position of stars, and even eclipses with mind-blowing accuracy. Which brings up a pretty sharp question, doesn't it? How did a civilization that, for all its amazing achievements, still used, urine to whiten their teeth, how did they invent a device this complex? The technological leap here is just staggering. It really makes you wonder, did they have a little outside help? And just as baffling is the Voynich manuscript. Okay, so this is a book from the 15th century, and it's written in a language that is completely unknown. I mean, nobody has ever been able to crack it. But the pictures are the real mystery. They show plants that don't exist anywhere on Earth, charts of galaxies, and diagrams that look just like biological cells, all drawn centuries before anyone invented a telescope or a microscope. All right, now let's take a huge leap forward in time, thousands of years. From the middle of the 20th century, those quiet little clues from the past, they give way to loud, dramatic, and honestly, pretty terrifying encounters. And there is no place that captures this shift better than Skinwalker Ranch in Utah. The strangeness there goes back centuries, but in the 1990s, things just went nuts. The family who owned the ranch, the Shermans, they reported everything from their cattle just vanishing to these glowing blue orbs. And get this, in one absolutely horrifying story, the rancher saw an orb, sent his dogs after it, heard a single yelp, and found nothing but a patch of burnt ground where one of his dogs had just been. And of course, you can't talk about modern UFOs without bringing up Roswell. Back in 1947, the first report was huge. A flying disc had crashed. But then, just 2 days after the military locked the area down, the story did a complete 180. It wasn't a flying disc, they said. Oh no, it was just a weather balloon. This sudden switch from alien craft to boring object basically wrote the playbook for official denials and public distrust that's been fueling conspiracy theories ever since. And the Roswell mystery just keeps getting weirder, even decades later. So years later, a local guy finds this strange stone out in the same desert. Its pattern, which shows lunar cycles, is flawless. I mean, you can't see tool marks even under a microscope. But here's the real kicker. That pattern is an almost identical match to a crop circle that appeared in the UK in 1996. How do you explain that? And look, these sightings aren't just coming from random people in the desert. In 2004, you have U.S. Navy Commander David Fravor and his whole squadron. They run into this bizarre object off the coast of California. He described it as a smooth, white, 40-foot-long tic-tac that was making impossible moves. It would just hover erratically and then gone. It accelerated at a speed that just defies physics, with no exhaust, no trail, nothing. And all of this really brings us to the absolute epicenter of modern UFO lore, that highly classified military base out in the Nevada desert we all know as Area 51. So what is really going on behind that fence? Well, back in 1989, a guy named Bob Lazar came forward with a story that was just mind-blowing. He claimed he worked at a secret base near Area 51, and his job was to reverse engineer 9 captured alien saucers. He talked about engines that ran on a stable, super heavy element, Element 115, that created its own gravity field to warp space. He said the cockpits were tiny, too small for a human pilot. And he even claimed he once saw small alien beings that his colleagues just called the kids. Now, Lazar's story sounds absolutely wild, right? But there are these strange echoes out there. So according to his wife, Sheila, the famous comedian Jackie Gleason, who was a huge UFO buff, was actually good friends with President Richard Nixon. And one night, Nixon supposedly took Gleason to an Air Force base and showed him something that left him totally shaken: the bodies of aliens frozen in cryogenic tanks. So what happened to these guys? Well, Gleason never once denied his wife's story. But Bob Lazar, he faced a total campaign to discredit him. His university records, his employment history, poof, vanished. Then, 30 years after he first went public, just as a documentary about him was being made, the FBI suddenly raids his science supply business. The official reason was pretty murky, but Lazar thinks they were looking for a sample of that Element 115 he claims he smuggled out. So, after all this, after this journey through ancient artifacts, modern sightings, and whistleblower testimony, we're kind of right back where we started, aren't we? We're left with this really big, profound, and honestly pretty unsettling question. I mean, think about it. We've seen symbols in Egypt that look exactly like helicopters. We've seen a Greek computer that shouldn't exist. We've heard testimony from top military pilots and government scientists. So, are these all just a bunch of weird coincidences, clever hoaxes, and simple misinterpretations? Or are they breadcrumbs? Little clues leading to a truth that's way stranger than we can even imagine. At the end of the day, the question isn't really if the evidence exists. The question is, what do you believe?